It's hard to believe that for almost 100 years, monsters have excited us and enthralled us on the silver screen and on our TVs throughout our childhoods and our adulthoods. These are the movies that have literally defined some of our cultures, from Japanese to the Western times.
To make you wonder if it's true, while your eyes convince you that it is.
It's probably fair to say that the quality of these movies has dipped in and out over those 100 years. When you look back at some of the Kong vs. Godzilla movies from the 1960s, well, let's just say it's fairly obvious that it's two guys in a costume. But those films never lost their luster. Kong even returned in the 1970s, 1980s, and even in the early 2000s in Peter Jackson's ill-fated 2006 reboot. But it wasn't until 2018, when we saw Kong vs. Godzilla, that we actually saw what we'd always been waiting for. Now with the new evil King Kong vs. Godzilla movie coming out this year, and also Tamaki Yamazaki's new Japanese reboot from the 1950s, this is a great year for monster movies. In fact, I'd actually say it's a renaissance. Which brings me rather neatly onto the subject of video games. Now, the very first monster masher that came out in the arcades during the mid to late 80s was Rampage. This was a simple yet absolutely classic little brawler that sowed the seeds for what was to come. Then of course, in the early 1990s, with the emergence of the Neo Geo and SNK, we got the seminal King of the Monsters. Now you guys know how much I love this game. This is an absolute classic of the genre, and still to this day stands as one of the greatest examples of a monster game. With the release of the PlayStation 2 in the year 2000, we started to see technology really take a leap forward. And when it came to monster games, there was one game that outshone them all: War of the Monsters on the PlayStation 2. This was an absolutely seminal title for its time and still holds up today. However, by my aspects, I have to be honest with you, as good as the game is, and this has a lot to do with the technology, it still feels like there's no weight to the actual monsters. The same can be said for this game, which is Godzilla Unleashed on the PlayStation 2. This came out a few years after. Again, the attempt was good, but I still feel like that the density and the impact and the weight of the monsters just wasn't there. Now, a lot of this was down to technology, but I was still waiting for the ultimate monster game. Of course, we also had the Ultraman games, which are seminally classic over in Japan. Now, these games pitted you against a variety of monsters as well as a giant superhero. The feeling of weight and density was actually quite good in this game, I thought, but still the technology quite wasn't there for me. Even today, with the most recent monster game, Gigabash, there's still a lack of weight to these characters. Now, don't get me wrong, I really do admire the effort that these developers put into these games, but I just feel like that they're not making full advantage of the technology that we have at our disposal in these modern times. I would actually argue that the games that actually make the most use out of making monsters look great are Demon's Souls and the seminal Monster Hunter Rise on the Nintendo Switch and PlayStation 4 and 5. Which finally brings me on to the subject of today's video. The game that I feel has been totally overlooked as the greatest monster game never made. Bayonetta 3 is an absolute masterpiece in my eyes, for many reasons. The actual game itself is multi-layered, a great story, and the characters themselves are so fun to play with. Great combat, great mechanics, everything about this game is absolutely top-notch, 10 out of 10. But for me, the greatest aspect of this game is something that hardly anybody talks about, and that is the Kaiju monster face-off. Now, I want you guys to tell me what you think. To me, this is unparalleled. For me, this is the pinnacle of monsters in video games. When I first experienced this earlier this year, I could not believe what the developers had pulled off in this game. And I truly believe Bayonetta 3 is one of the most underrated masterpieces in video game history. Not just because of the incredible graphics, not just because of the amazing fighting mechanics, not just because of the aspects of the gameplay that haven't been done anywhere else before. No, I believe this is a masterpiece for one single reason, and that's what you're about to see right now. I think this has the greatest example ever in video games of monsters facing off against each other, or kaijus, if you want to call them their proper term. For me, the developers of this game should be nominated an absolute top tier award for what they did in this. It's absolutely astounding. And you know what? I truly believe this game speaks for itself. No more needs to be said. However, I will just say one more thing. This is the only time in video game history where I truly feel like a giant kaiju monster. I truly feel like a Godzilla. The feeling of absolute impact when you hit another monster, when you hit buildings, it's just unparalleled. I say to the developers of this game, please make us a game with the mechanics of what you've done here, of the monsters facing off against each other, and make a fighting game of kaiju monsters. I truly believe that the mechanics that they've made in this game are so good that they could absolutely make an actual game of itself just with these mechanics. Seriously guys, just watch this. There is nothing else like it in the video game market. This is what I call pure epic masterpiece. Well, there you go, guys. Let me know what you thought. Was that, or was that not, the greatest ever Kaiju face-off in video game history? I truly believe that there is room in the market for a game just like that, with 15, 16 characters to choose from, facing off against each other with those mechanics, with that graphics engine. I truly believe that the developers of Bayonetta 3 are onto something here, and they could absolutely change the video game market with a game like this. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comments. I personally think that this is honestly the greatest ever monster face-off in video game history. I know I keep saying that, but it really is to me. Well, thanks for watching, and as always, I hope you enjoyed it. And until next time, keep fighting.